Leia, do you remember your mother? Your real mother?
Just a little bit. She died when I was very young.
What do you remember?
Just images, really. Feelings.
Tell me.
She was very beautiful. Kind, but sad.
Silk rustles across polished marble as the fate of a galaxy balances on the steady breath of a young queen. Padmé Amidala was only 14 when she took the throne of Naboo, but behind the painted serenity of her regal mask burned a strategist's mind and a rebel's heart. To her people, she was a symbol of grace. To her enemies, an unexpected obstacle. From the halls of Theed to the gantries of the Galactic Senate, her life was a quiet war between duty and desire. A girl who chose to risk everything for freedom, and how, in loving a future she believed she could protect, she helped shape the tragedy that would consume it.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Family.
Ruwe and Jobal Nabiri were a human couple from the mid-rim planet of Naboo and the parents of Sola and Padme, as well as the maternal grandparents of Ryu and Pooja Nabiri and great-grandparents to Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa Solo. Ruwe was born in 77 BBY in a mountain village to Winama Nabiri, a cloth weaver, and inherited from his mother a deep sense of compassion and empathy. Jobal, born in 76 BBY, grew up in the city of Karen on Naboo, under the care of her mother, Ryu. Her father's identity was forgotten over time, but she enjoyed a secure and happy childhood. Ruwe became active in the Refugee Relief Movement, or RRM, at the age of 10, later rising to the position of president. He also lectured on microeconomics at Theed University. Jobal, impressed by Ruwe's social acumen, fell in love with him shortly after they met. Their respective mothers, longtime friends, had secretly plotted to arrange a marriage between them, and were surprised when the two actually fell in love. The couple married in 51 BBY and helped found a mountain village near Theed, where Ruwe contributed his skills as a builder and Jobal nurtured the community spirit. They welcomed their first daughter, Sola, in 50 BBY, and 4 years later, Padme was born. As their daughters grew, Ruwe and Jubal moved the family to Theed to provide greater educational and social opportunities. Jobal dedicated herself to social service, instilling strong values of compassion and selflessness in their children, qualities that would be reflected in Padme's later career. In 33 BBY, Senator Palpatine visited the Nabiris at the RRM headquarters to persuade them to allow Padme to run for the throne. Though hesitant to put their 13-year-old daughter in such a position, Ruwe and Jobal ultimately supported her. Padme went on to become princess and then queen of Naboo, while her parents endured the hardships of the Trade Federation's invasion, during which they were arrested and imprisoned. Ruwe maintained contact with Padme throughout her political career, particularly after she became a senator for the Chamal sector, while Jobal continued her charitable work and upheld the family's reputation for generosity and public service. Tragically, many years into the future, in 18 BBY, Jobal's mother Ryu was killed by Inquisitor Malorum after being interrogated about Padme and her secret pregnancy. Sola Nabiri, the elder daughter, married the architect Darad Janran after attending university on Naboo. They had 2 daughters, Ryu and Pooja, and retained the Nabiri surname due to its prominence in Naboo's social and political circles. Sola embraced domestic life and often worried about her sister Padme, playfully teasing her about suitors and observing Padme's dedication to public service. Her youngest daughter, Pooja, later continued the family tradition of political involvement by representing Naboo in the Imperial Senate. When the family relocated to Theed, Padme entered the finest schools and the capital could offer, splitting her days between rigorous study and retreats at Naboo's Lake Country, where beauty and responsibility seemed to coexist without tension. As a volunteer with the refugee relief movement, following her father's example, Padme traveled to Shada B. Boran to assist in relocating displaced natives. An outer rim planet that was undergoing an ecological crisis, the planet was freezing over, its population was quickly evacuated. She witnessed the hopeful departure and the devastating aftermath, as many failed to survive on unfamiliar worlds not adapted to the Shada B. Boran's unique physiology, driving the people extinct. Idealism, she learned early, could have unintended casualties. She entered the Legislative Youth Program soon after, where politics became more than theory. There she met Palo, a young idealist who offered a glimpse of ordinary adolescence. Their brief, tender relationship dissolved as their paths diverged, his toward art and hers toward governance. Even as her world widened, she carried her origins with her. Long after, she would ascend to the highest office on Naboo. She maintained the village custom of painting her thumbnails stark white, a practice used to signal familial dedication. Her ascent was swift, almost unnervingly so to her future political adversaries. At 8, she joined the apprentice legislature. By 11, she was a full apprentice legislator. Under the mentorship of Celia Shisoan, she learned not only procedure, but persuasion. By 13, Padme Nabiri had become Princess of Theed, rallying public support against the prolonged rule of King Eris of Varuna. She was young, articulate, and increasingly impossible to ignore. During this time, she became involved with Ian Lago, son of Varuna's prime counselor, Kuna Lago. The relationship drew disapproval from his father and ended without scandal when Varuna abdicated and Padme entered the political race for the throne. The idea had first been floated to her parents and discreetly encouraged by Senator Palpatine, whose political calculations ran deeper than most realized. At 14, Padme was elected Queen of Naboo, astonishingly young, though not unprecedented. Upon taking the regnal name Amidala, she moved quickly to amend the constitution, limiting future monarchs to only 2 terms, a subtle rebuke to the stagnation that had preceded her. As Queen Amidala, she was austere, ceremonial, and distant, her voice measured, her presence calm and regal. As Padme, she remained more direct and fiercely empathetic. So complete was the separation that official Republic communications listed Padme merely as one of the Queen's handmaidens. Even the Jedi envoys dispatched to Naboo did not realize the soft-spoken attendant was the monarch herself. When a Senate security officer speculated that the handmaidens served as decoys based on irregular starship manifests, the suggestion was dismissed as absurd, severing the public figure of Queen Amidala from her past self as Padme Nabiri. The Queen's inner circle, known as the Queen's handmaidens, young women of similar age and appearance, served as confidants, protectors, and doubles, a strategy devised by Captain Panaka, who insisted his sovereign learn weapons and self-defense alongside diplomacy. As Queen, her closest attendants included Sabe, Irete, Rabe, Yane, and Sache. Later, as Senator, Dorme, Corday, Verse, Mote, and Ele would stand in similar roles. From the beginning, her life was an exercise in duality, girl and monarch, idealist and tactician, symbol and secret, and the galaxy would come to learn that beneath the stillness of her painted gaze was a will already accustomed to caring far more than it revealed.
Queen.
So, A transmission from the planet.
It's Queen Amidala herself.
At last, we are getting results. Again, you come before us, Your Highness.
You will not be so pleased when you hear what I have to say, Viceroy. Your trade boycott of our planet has ended.
I was not aware of such failure.
I have word that the Chancellor's ambassadors are with you now, and that you have been commanded to reach a settlement.
I know nothing of any ambassadors. You must be mistaken.
Beware, Viceroy. The Federation has gone too far this time.
We would never do anything without the approval of the Senate. You assume too much.
We will see.
Only 5 months into her reign, the first great test of her life came. In 33 BBY, Padme Amidala faced a crisis that would define not only her rule, but her faith in the Republic itself. Citing a dispute over newly imposed trade route taxation, the Trade Federation, led by Viceroy Newt Gunray, blockaded Naboo. It was presented as a protest rather than an occupation. In truth, it was a siege. Naboo, a world dependent on imported goods, found itself slowly strangled, its vulnerability exposing the fragile machinery of galactic politics. Amidala pursued diplomacy. She appealed to the Senate, trusted in procedure, and waited for the system to function as promised. It did not. Gunray, secretly taking orders from Darth Sidious, stalled negotiations and escalated in secret. When Supreme Chancellor Valorum dispatched Jedi envoys to mediate, the Viceroy ordered their deaths, only to discover the ambassadors were Jedi Knights Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Their survival accelerated the Federation's plans. Communications were sabotaged, droid armies deployed. Invasion followed. Amidala did not authorize war. The Federation invaded anyway. The Royal Security Forces were swept aside, Theed occupied, and the Queen herself taken, though not as her captors believed. While she moved in the plain attire of a handmaiden, her double, Sabe, wore the painted face and carried the illusion of sovereignty. Ordered to sign a treaty legitimizing Naboo's occupation, the decoy refused. For that defiance, they were sentenced to detention, where they would be held and possibly tortured until an agreement could be coerced. Before imprisonment could seal Naboo's fate, the Jedi intervened. With the unexpected aid of a Gungan outcast, Jar Jar Binks, the Queen's retinue was freed. Reluctantly, painfully, Amidala agreed to leave her world and plead her case before the Senate in person. The escape from Naboo's blockade nearly ended in annihilation. Under heavy fire, the royal starship sustained critical damage, saved only by the unlikely heroics of the astromech droid R2-D2, whom Amidala personally commended. Forced to land on the remote desert world of Tatooine, she made another choice that would ripple far beyond the moment. She set aside the throne entirely. Disguised as the handmaiden, Padme, she walked the dusty streets of Mos Espa beside Qui-Gon, Jar Jar, and R2-D2, searching for parts to repair their ship. There she met a 9-year-old slave named Anakin Skywalker. He was earnest, gifted, and impossibly hopeful. She felt the pull of his optimism, even as she questioned the wisdom of trusting Naboo's fate to a child's daring. When Anakin offered to race in the Boonta Eve Classic to win the needed credits, Amidala's composure wavered, hesitant to wager the fate of her world on a young boy, but relented on Qui-Gon's advice. Against all odds, the boy won, and in that victory, small, improbable, and a beacon of hope under the austere desert sun, another thread was woven into her story. Leaving the desert world behind, the Queen and her retinue made their way to the Republic capital of Coruscant, with the young boy now in tow. On Coruscant, Padmé Amidala resumed the dignity of her crown, armed again with ceremony and rhetoric. At her side, Senator Palpatine cautioned her gently about the Senate's decay and about procedure weaponized into paralysis. She believed in institutions. She believed they would respond to injustice. They did not. Her plea for immediate relief for Naboo dissolved into debate and delay. The machinery of the Republic turned, but not for her people. Guided subtly by Palpatine's counsel, Amidala did something unprecedented. She called for a vote of no confidence in Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum. The motion ignited the chamber. Valorum's government fell. Palpatine rose, soon elected in his place. Amidala had forced action at last, though the consequences of that action were only beginning to unfold. Refusing to remain on Coruscant for political theater, she chose instead to return home. On the journey, she confided in Qui-Gon Jinn her intention to do what generations of Naboo rulers had not: seek alliance with the Gungans. Through Naboo's swamps, shadowed by patrol droids and scattered remnants of the Royal Security Forces, she traveled with the Jedi and a small guard contingent until they reached the Gungan Sacred Palace. Before Boss Rugor Nass, the performance of monarchy faltered. Sabe, still disguised as queen, made the formal appeal and failed. The old distrust between Naboo and Gungan hung heavy in the air. Then Amidala did something far more radical than a speech. She knelt, casting aside the illusion. She revealed herself as the true queen and asked for help, not as a ruler demanding aid, but as a leader seeking partnership. Trust answered trust. Boss Nass agreed. Two divided peoples prepared to fight as one. Her plan was simultaneous and yet simple: a Gungan ground assault to draw the droid army into open battle, while she led a strike team into the occupied royal palace to capture Viceroy Newt Gunray. Starfighters would launch to attack droid control ships to cripple the Federation's droid army. It was bold, perhaps reckless, but it restored agency to a world under siege. The battle that followed was chaotic and costly. The Gungans held the line. Inside the palace, Amidala pressed forward. Above Naboo's skies, the child, Anakin Skywalker, destroyed the droid control ship, collapsing the invasion from orbit. Victory came, but not without cost. Darth Maul, a Sith assassin, was sent to ensure the Federation's success, struck down Qui-Gon Jinn before defeated by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Amidala stood among the mourners at Jinn's cremation in Theed's funeral temple, the flames reflecting in eyes that had seen too much for 14 years old. In the celebration that followed, Naboo and Gungan stood united at last, their long division dissolved in shared triumph. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine attended, as did the Jedi High Council, yet even in victory shadows lingered. The Jedi Council, in accordance with the Supreme Chancellor, approached her quietly, requesting that knowledge of the return of the Sith remain secret for stability and for order. Years later, in 25 BBY, Amidala concluded her second term as queen. Some urged her to amend the constitution she herself had reformed, to remain in power for a third term. She refused, stepping down in accordance with the limits she had championed. She passed the throne to Queen Jamelia, relinquishing authority, not because she lacked support, but because she believed power must always yield. It was a pattern that would define her life: to fight fiercely, to win at great cost, and then, when the moment demanded, to let go. Senator.
Let us now vote on Senator Bertoni's bill to fund 5 million additional clones.
The opposition to this bill must be allowed to speak first.
Unfortunately, Senator Organa is nowhere to be found.
I will speak on his behalf.
Senator Amidala will be permitted to speak.
Tekla Minau. Tekla is one of my aides. Like so many of the people that we tell ourselves we're here to serve, Tekla lives in a district that rarely has electricity and running water as a result of the war. Her children can now only bathe every 2 weeks, and they have no light in which to read or study at night. The Republic has always funded these basic services, but now there are those who would divert the money to the war, with no thought for what the people need to survive. If not for people like Tekla and her children, who are we fighting for? My people. Your people. All of our people. This war is meant to save them from suffering, not increase it.
Padme had intended to step away from power and follow her sister into private life. Instead, at Queen Jamilia's urging, she accepted election as Naboo's representative to the Galactic Senate in 24 BBY, succeeding Horace Vansil. The crown was gone, but the ceremony remained. She retained the regal wardrobe, the chrome-plated starships, the quiet authority of someone her people still treated like royalty, not simply out of custom, but out of genuine love and respect. On Coruscant, she lived modestly by senatorial standards, though Naboo's elegance followed her even into a small penthouse overlooking the city planet's endless lights. She entered the Senate alongside figures like Rush Clovis, a royal politician from the planet Scipio, with whom she briefly rekindled the possibility of personal attachment before ending it on professional grounds. Increasingly, she chose duty over intimacy. As the Separatist Crisis deepened under the leadership of Count Dooku, Amidala emerged as a leading voice against the proposed Military Creation Act. To her, building an army signaled surrender to fear. She organized the Campaign Against Republic Militarization, arguing that courage meant exhausting diplomacy before reaching for weapons. Her words drew admiration and backlash. Critics twisted her statements into insults against soldiers, forcing her to clarify that she opposed alarmism, not those who defended their homes. She was appointed to a team of negotiators who attempted diplomatic negotiations with the Separatists. However, an increasing number of terrorist attacks, which Padme suspected but couldn't prove, were at the behest of Separatist leader and former Jedi and politician Count Dooku, ending the talks. Violence would continue to escalate, and Padme herself would find herself the target of attempted assassinations. One such attempt on Coruscant killed her decoy, Corday, and several guards. Amidala appeared before the Senate hours later, alive, defiant, and more convinced than ever that Dooku was behind the attacks. The Jedi Council, including Masters Yoda and Mace Windu, placed her under protection, though they hesitated to believe a former Jedi capable of orchestration. Her assigned protector was no longer a child from Tatooine, but a Jedi Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, now older and slightly more mature than the boy she briefly knew. A second attempt on her life, this time involving the bounty hunter Zamozel and a trail that led to Jango Fett, prompted the Council to send Padme back to Naboo under Anakin's escort, while Obi-Wan Kenobi investigated further. Disguised as refugees, they traveled quietly. Along the way, their conversations deepened from politics to sacrifice, from public duty to private longing. On Naboo, amid family dinners and the quiet beauty of Varekino, affection grew into something neither could easily deny, nor openly accept. Bound by the Jedi Code and her political responsibilities, Padme resisted, but soon relented. When Anakin was haunted by visions of his mother's suffering, Padme went with him to Tatooine. There, they discovered Shmi Skywalker had been taken by Tusken Raiders. Anakin found her too late, and his grief curdled into vengeance. He confessed to massacring the entire Tusken village. Shocked but compassionate, Padme comforted him, choosing understanding over condemnation, another decision born of empathy, though its consequences were darker than she knew. A message from Obi-Wan soon pulled them back into crisis. He had been captured on Geonosis, and evidence confirmed Dooku's alliance with the Trade Federation's new gunray. Defying instructions to remain safe, Padme insisted on going to Geonosis to help rescue him. If Anakin was to protect her, she reasoned he would do so at her side. On Geonosis, the pair were ultimately captured and sentenced to execution by the Geonosian and Separatist ally Poggle the Lesser. Padme and Anakin finally confessed their love in the arena moments before death seemed certain. When beasts were unleashed, Padme fought fiercely, picking locks, scaling pillars, firing blasters, even after being slashed by a Nexu. Rescue came in the form of Mace Windu and a Jedi strike team, and soon the arena became the opening battleground of the Clone Wars. With the arrival of Yoda and the newly revealed Grand Army of the Republic claimed victory at the first Battle of Geonosis. But it was a victory that proved her worst fears correct. The army she had opposed was now marching. Amidala watched as Anakin, wounded and missing his right forearm after a duel with Dooku, was carried from the field of battle. The war she had tried to prevent had begun, and the line between her public convictions and private choices were growing thinner by the day.
Clone Wars. In the aftermath of Geonosis, Padme rushed to the Jedi Temple with the wounded Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, defying protocol to see Anakin before tending to her own injuries. Warned by Kenobi, at Yoda's direction, to keep her relationship with Skywalker cordial and distant, she agreed outwardly, though she did not mean it. On Naboo, at Verikino, Padme and Anakin married in secret, witnessed only by R2-D2 and C-3PO. The ceremony bound them in love and in secrecy. Only a single archive scroll marked the union, though Captain Panaka discovered the truth and quietly informed Palpatine, who stored the knowledge for future use. As the Clone Wars spread, Padme's voice for diplomacy was increasingly drowned out by artillery. She remained on Coruscant under a constant threat, separated from Anakin for long stretches, as he and Kenobi commanded clone forces across the front lines. They exchanged coded messages and rare reunions, balancing affection with the weight of concealment. Throughout the war, Padme refused to retreat into safety. She aided Jedi missions, once accompanying Yoda to rescue stranded Jedi on Ilum, and continued diplomatic efforts in volatile systems, sometimes surviving on instinct and luck as much as strategy. On Naboo, an artist's sudden premonition coincided with a separatist attack that nearly cost her life. She was saved at the last moment. In the Senate, she aligned closely with Senator Bail Organa, working against corruption and exposing separatist sympathizers. She endured criticism from those who blamed her opposition to militarization for the outbreak of the war. Still, she persisted, negotiating in the Outer Rim, confronting traitors, and navigating political minefields that proved as lethal as any battlefield. Her private life grew more fragile. On Tatooine and Naboo, in stolen hours, she and Anakin's love deepened. Shadowed by his grief, his anger, and secrecy it required by the Jedi Code. She witnessed flashes of the darkness inside him and answered them with compassion, believing empathy could anchor him. War repeatedly forced her into direct danger. On Geonosis, she had fought in an arena. Later, when Jabba the Hutt's son was kidnapped, Padme uncovered a conspiracy between Count Dooku and Jabba's Uncle Zero. Exposing the plot, and securing an alliance that granted the Republic access to crucial hot hyperspace routes. Even in prison, she manipulated droids, stalled executions, and turned captors against each other. She continued threading diplomacy through chaos, investigating threats to the Jedi, rescuing allies from Sith traps, and serving on the Security Committee as terrorist attacks shook Coruscant. Each crisis revealed the same pattern: institutions hardening, freedoms narrowing, Palpatine consolidating authority while claiming necessity. Then came the Malevolence Crisis. Lured into the path of General Grievous's devastating superweapon by design of Darth Sidious, Padme was captured to manipulate Anakin into halting the Republic assault. Refusing to become leverage, she ordered the attack to continue, though Anakin chose her over strategy. Aboard the warship, she sabotaged systems evading capture and ultimately helped engineer the superweapon's destruction by sending it crashing into a moon. She and Anakin escaped, but the pattern was clear. Her love was becoming a pressure point others could exploit. Across battlefields and Senate floors, Padmé Amidala remained what she had always been, unyielding in her belief that the Republic could still be saved. Yet with every compromise, every emergency power granted, every secret she kept to protect the man she loved, the distance between the democracy she defended and the reality taking shape around her grew smaller. The war was no longer just being fought on distant worlds. It was tightening quietly at the center. As the war dragged on, Padme continued chasing fragile chances for peace. On Rhodia, she confronted her old friend Onaconda far after he aligned with the Separatists out of desperation for supplies promised by Newt Gunray. Imprisoned upon arrival, she turned the situation into a calculated trap, coordinating with Farr and aided by Jar Jar Binks' accidental theatrics to capture the Viceroy. Yet even that victory dissolved when Asajj Ventress freed him and returned him to Count Dooku. Soon after, pirate leader Hondo Ohnaka claimed to have captured Dooku. Padme urged caution, advising Palpatine to confirm the claim before paying ransom. Though Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi verified it, treachery followed. The pirates double-crossed their captives. A Republic senator was killed, and Dooku escaped once more. Each episode followed the same rhythm: a narrow diplomatic gain, then erosion. Enemies slipped through the cracks, allies died. The Republic leaned harder on war. For Padme, the pattern was becoming painfully similar: hard-won gains dissolving into a stalemate, enemies escaping consequences, and the Republic bending further under the strain. Each diplomatic mission felt less like a step towards peace and more like holding back a tide determined to rise. The realization was settling in. She was no longer negotiating from a position of stability, but from the edge of something unraveling. The victories were temporary, but the consequences would not be.
Now a word from our sponsors.
Do you or a loved one suffer from Sith-transmitted infections? If you come into close contact with a Sith or a dark side artifact, you might be at risk for an STI. Talk to your doctor today about STIs. A message from the Republic Department of Health. Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're still currently exploring the beautiful world of Naboo. There's a lot to explore here. Beautiful city of Theed. Checking out the...
doing some snorkeling.
Doing some snorkeling with the fish and the OPC killer beasts, yes.
Yeah, but before we get into that, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the meat of this episode. If you want to support the show, we want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, but you can become a Patreon supporter as well at patreon.com/starlores for as little as $3 a month. Get access to all the bonus episodes, and the $5 tier, the night tier, gets you access to not only the bonus episodes, but ad-free listening as well. So no annoying ad interruptions.
Although our in-universe ads are still
there. Our in-universe ads are still there. So don't worry about that. The good ads will still be there. But yeah, also don't forget to reach out to us: Facebook, Instagram, X. We are on Discord. Anything I missed there? I think that's all the socials.
All the socials for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah, reach out to us. You can DM us on there. Also, if you want to email us, any business inquiries, stuff like that, starlordspodcast@gmail.com. And guys, don't forget to rate and review the show. That helps us get to a wider audience. That always helps, especially you Apple listeners on Apple Podcasts. And another reminder to please go and subscribe to us on YouTube. I think that's all I had.
Great. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Miss Padmé Amidala Nabiri. This episode has been a long time coming. Is
she the number one babe or the number two babe next to Leia?
Depends who you ask, I guess. They were never really my type, but
oh no,
no.
Okay.
I'm more into Hut.
You're more into Twi'leks.
No, I'm a Hut guy myself.
Okay.
But each their own. No, Padmé Amidala. She is a very pivotal character, obviously, but she also exists in this weird in-between realm. So Star Wars is often built on trios. You have Han, Luke, and Leia as the original cast. In the sequels, you have Poe, Rey, and Finn. And the prequels, in a way, you can consider it to be Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme. Kind of make up that trio.
Yeah.
But Padme doesn't seem to have... Her role is a lot more limited, I guess I could say, in the sense that her plot lines kind of work out are more like in the realm of politics and kind of physically separated from the other characters. Of course, in episode 2, you have the whole subplot where Anakin and Padme are spending a lot of time together. But in terms of their life, like in real life terms, until they get married, and even then they spend a lot of time apart because of the Clone Wars. The three of them aren't really together all that often, all the time. But she is kind of that third component. You have Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme as kind of like the prequel trio.
Yeah.
There is in episode 2 a deleted scene where you actually get kind of introduced to Padme's family. And that's also something that kind of gets missed a lot is like, yeah, where did Padme come from? What's her background? You get to meet Anakin's mom.
Mm-hmm.
But in the movies, at least, nothing is ever said about Padme's parents. You don't even get names. She has a sister that nobody knows about. Like, she has this whole family that live all throughout the background of episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
But they're never mentioned or talked about or seen other than that deleted scene. So I think that deleted scene could have helped flesh her out a little bit. Like I was saying, even her character, and we discussed this in our episode 3 review, actually. I can't remember if episode 3 or episode 2, or maybe even both.
Yeah, I don't recall.
But she is definitely a character that could have been fleshed out a lot more, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
She feels very archetypical. Like she has almost these like key qualities that they have to put in with her. But as a character, as a living, breathing person, sometimes people are kind of like, oh, she just kind of forgives Anakin for literally admitting to slaughtering a village of Tusken Raiders. Like
that's always been the big, big like WTF.
yeah, exactly.
And then that scene of after Anakin kills the Tusken Raiders. But.
Yeah, like there's not enough relationship. If they had been already built this like long-term relationship, and then they discovered that after the fact, maybe it could be more forgivable.
Yeah. But
the fact that they hadn't seen each other in years, and then all of a sudden, you have just what's depicted on screen of their relationship building, and then he does this horrific thing. Like, it just speaks to kind of a lack of development on Padme's character, which is unfortunate considering how important she ends up being the mother of Luke, being the reason Anakin becomes Darth Vader. It's like having the story of Romeo and Juliet, with Juliet not really being engaged as a full character, right? Like that's half the people that matter for the story to happen.
Yeah, I do think, and just if people want like some source material, I'm trying to remember to bring up source material more, but like I think Queen's Shadow was a big novel that does a lot of her
character development.
Yeah, character like her family origins and all that. That fills in a lot of those gaps, much needed filling in of those gaps. Yeah. If anyone's interested in exploring.
Yeah, go get yourself a copy.
Yeah.
Speaking to her character, though, and maybe I don't know if this is intended or not on Lucas's part, considering his own politics, but Padme at least to me, seems to have a bit of like a liberal naivety, both in her political life and in her personal life. In episode 1, she's very trusting of the Republic and that these institutions ought to function a certain way, and they're not working the way she had grown up believing that these big institutions should work. And then with Anakin, like we just mentioned, like this naivety towards his psycho killer instincts. I don't know if Lucas intentionally had that as like an undercurrent of her character, but this is kind of this very not world weary kind of belief of how things should be, this idealistic, liberal naivety about the world that I think ends up backfiring in both politics and in her personal life. But even with her whole stance on like opposing the Military Creation Act, again, I don't know if Lucas is like intentionally funneling his own political views through her and not realizing what he's doing, or it's intentionally done. But
like she's kind of unrealistic hippie.
Right, exactly. Like her
doesn't really make sense for someone who's been groomed from the time they were a child to be,
unless
like
they were groomed with the wrong politics to begin with. But yeah, like opposing a Military Creation Act when you're on the brink of war and you have an obviously hostile force growing, right? It wasn't the creation. Now, yes, we now in hindsight know that the whole thing was a plot by Sidious to create the clone army. But just even if they did regular military recruitment,
right?
For decades before the war even broke out, like having a military doesn't mean you have to use it for offensive measures.
Right. The logic is that you have it so you don't have to use it.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, her just opposition to creating a republic military when you have like the Confederacy very obviously gearing up for a war, right? Like you sit on the border watching your enemy assemble arms and be like, no, we're going to solve this through diplomacy and we're intentionally going to disarm ourselves. Like that just doesn't seem like a smart idea in anyone who deals in real global politics.
Yeah, and even the fact that she acquiesces to Palpatine's suggestion to call for the or for a non-confidence vote for Finis Valorum too. Yeah, right. It's just like, oh, is that what I should do? Okay, sure.
Yes.
Like you're this very junior senator coming into the Senate.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I guess I could see like how Palpatine, he's from Naboo himself. He's like a sort of a towering figure in the Senate.
Well, of course you're going to trust him.
Yeah.
And he's going to leverage that.
Yeah.
And even kind of building on that, like, the fact that she even ran for queen was prompted by Palpatine as well. So, like, is this a case where Palpatine has been grooming her from behind the scenes too, just to set up his pieces on the board? And again, Padme's naivety is what he needs to achieve his goals. Yeah. Did Lucas intentionally write all that, or is that just a happy accident, unintended consequence of?
This may seem like maybe like I see what you're saying. Like it's sort of a critique of it. You're looking at the character. Why is she this way? Let me offer perhaps a real world example that it might actually show you that, these heads of states, these monarchs, sometimes are a little bit aloof. And the prime example being Queen Elizabeth and her what is very well known to be favorite son, Prince Andrew.
Never heard of the guy.
Yeah. And if any, this is being recorded in the early year of our Lord 2026. And if anyone is familiar with the Epstein scandal and Prince Andrew,
anyone is familiar. If anyone's ever heard of this,
I think Andrew he's actually now going to jail over this. He's been arrested, and which is actually pretty wild. Like I don't know when the last time a member of the royal family was ever arrested, but it is sort of like famous. It is sort of famously known that Queen Elizabeth doted on Andrew and sort of loved him the most, and he was kind of the favorite child.
Yeah.
And she was much harsher on Charles. Yeah. But and maybe that's just because she knew he was going to be the heir to the throne, so she was going to be tougher on him.
And there are also interpersonal things that you'll never know.
Yeah, that's right.
Right,
yeah.
Like a mother and her children, not just a queen and her heirs. Right. There's also that human factor. But yeah, go on. Yeah.
But it was always known that Andrew was kind of a slime ball.
It was an open secret.
Yeah,
everyone talked about it.
But apparently Elizabeth herself kind of looked the other way a lot. With him. So.
And again, whether or not that was self-deceptive, or if it was I know better and I'm gonna ignore it, or is it I choose not to believe what's very obviously in front of my face.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, Queen Elizabeth herself is quite well loved.
Right. Yeah.
And not seen in kind of that negative light as her son is. So I could see the same way Padme, right? She's well loved by the people. She genuinely cares about the people. You get that much is true to her benefit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that naivety.
But I just bring the real world example. That does kind of happen sometimes, right? And we don't always know the motivations of people or why they have this poor judgment sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It does just happen.
Or if they are being used by others.
That's right. Yeah.
Of course,
being manipulated.
Those powerful forces that are working behind them, someone like Palpatine, someone like certain billionaire financier, might be positioning their pawns, as it were, right? Yeah. They want someone who's naive, who will do what they ask without realizing what they're doing.
Yeah,
is equally plausible. But the question is, did Lucas intend that to be the case, or are we reading too much into the story?
Mm-hmm.
I leave the question out there. I'm not saying one way or the other, but it is.
We'll let the audience answer the question.
Let you decide.
What do you think?
The fate of the queen. Just kind of fun trivia behind the scenes. Keira Knightley, I think we've mentioned this before, played one of Padme's handmaidens.
Yeah. And they do look very similar.
They look so similar that their mothers couldn't tell them apart sometimes.
Probably especially when they were young. I think now they're older and you can tell them distinct, but probably when they're young.
Yeah. And even to the point when you're watching the movie, it's hard. I don't know when it's Keira Knightley or when it's what's her name? Natalie Portman.
Yeah, Natalie Portman, yeah.
They do look quite alike, and they do interchange between being the queen and being the handmaid.
Mm-hmm.
So, just some fun trivia. We also mentioned this before, but I figure I'll mention it again here, is with her children. And of course, we'll be doing a part 2 on Padme, as people have realized that we hadn't covered her whole life in this one episode. But talking about her children in the future, people often think that the children take after the parent, like Luke takes off after Anakin and Leia after Padme, because Leia is the political figure. She's also royalty. Luke is also becoming a Jedi like his father. But personality-wise, it's actually intercrossed, where where Luke actually is more of Padme's sincere heart and temperament and optimism, and Leia is the feisty Anakin, bold type of character, which is actually really cool. That is a very subtle thing, but it is very cool that you can see you get really both their parents in each twin, but also how they kind of cross as well.
Yeah, and it is also an interesting, temperamentally, personality. Luke is more similar to the mother and Leia is more similar to the father, but in terms of actual setting, Leia is obviously royalty, like her mother. Grew up in privilege, and Luke is grew up
on Tatooine.
Yeah, from Tatooine, literally a nobody from Tatooine,
from a backwater.
Yeah, so Yeah, so that is interesting that they actually, I don't know if that was intentional in the writing, but they do kind of make the characters share those characteristics of both their parents. Both of them share both characteristics of their parents.
Yeah,
so.
It makes me really sad actually that Padme dies so early in the twins like history, because it could be cool to see what an interaction between Padme and her kids would have been like.
Ooh, alt history time. Like, yeah, what if Padme survives and then like all of a sudden she's
a short story.
Oh,
like,
is there?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
I believe, I want to say there's one where she's like leading a rebellion against the Empire, and I don't know where that's from, or maybe I'm misremembering, or it was some kind of fan fiction. But
yeah, like what if she actually dies a few years later? Sort of as a fugitive on the run, right?
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, exactly. And like, is it Vader himself that's hunting her? Is she know who Vader is? Is she actively fighting against her husband? You know, like there's so many dynamics and layers that could be there if you had it. Which actually leads me right into my last point here, which is the whole question of in Return of the Jedi, where Leia says she remembers her mother, which has been kind of like a lingering plot hole that's never really been officially addressed, actually, which is surprising because there's so many plot holes that have been filled in by books or comics or some explanation to fill in retroactive information, but this is one kind of plot hole that's never really concretely been addressed.
I mean, they'd probably just say it was like a Force ghost or something.
So there's a couple
Force vision of Padme.
There's a couple of ways they've, like I said, they've addressed but not concretely. One is that there's an image of her in, I want to say Leia's baby bedroom.
Yeah.
There's a big like mural of her or something on the wall, and this comes from a comic book.
Yeah, no, this is from the Zahn, Heir to the Empire comic series. But I believe Heir to the comic publication, the graphic novel, came out after the films. I think when someone will have to fact check me on that, but I believe the graphic novel adaptation came out after the films.
I believe it came out before episode 1, but they had been told who the casting was.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, so they intentionally inserted her kind of like imagery there.
Yeah. Because I remember seeing that, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, that totally looks like Padme.
Yeah.
And the pic, if you go, I actually did make a short of it like a year ago.
Yeah, I remember watching it.
Yeah, people can go and look on our YouTube. Go subscribe on YouTube. But go look there, and you'll see the picture of it. And yeah, it's like, oh, like there's this little Easter egg of Padme in the graphic novel.
And I think they're kind of subtly hinting at like, okay, as a baby, she's seen her image, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, she would have been a famous character, right? Like, it's not like you wouldn't have seen her anywhere, especially like from Naboo or something.
Yeah, and her adoptive parents would have known Padme and would have probably made an effort to create an image of who Padme was.
Actually, now that we say it that way, I could see how she could have seen. But I guess the way she says it in the movie
implies that she's
like
met her,
physically met her.
Yeah. A little more to that though, with the baby thing. Even I think in the Return of the Jedi novelization, I want to say, there is effort made to say that Leia as a baby took in all this information, like was very observant. So like, again, stressing that like any image she's seen of her mother, maybe a hologram of her mother, a recording or something. Yeah. Now, all that being said, the alternative theory is kind of what you mentioned there too, is that like, it's more of a Force connection. Yeah. She had felt even in the womb, they kind of, and we see Leia have a similar experience with her own twins. She kind of has this like Force bond with them where they almost communicate psychically. Mm-hmm. And that's the other theory, is that like, Leia has these like Force impressions of how her mother was.
Yeah.
More so than like a physical representation. So all these are kind of left as possibilities, and they're all kind of like subtly mentioned too in the book versions of the movies or in comic books, like we were saying. But there's never been like a concretely defined, this is what Leia was referring to when she said this. We do know that in the earlier Return of the Jedi novelization, when it first came out, that the idea was that Obi-Wan had personally taken both Leia and her mother Padme to Alderaan after their birth. But we know now, since the movie came out, that she dies in childbirth, and the kids are given away independently. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to wait for our verdict from Dave Filoni. Tell us
Please,
the truth,
please don't.
Filoni.
It's gonna be some weird connection to Ahsoka.
They're gonna make an entire trilogy off of this
Leia's
one.
memories.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyways, I think we'll get going here. But thanks everyone again for listening. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and rate and review the show. Help us get to a wider audience, and we appreciate y'all. We'll see you next time.